My name is Kate. Life's got a real funny way of showing you who's boss. Just a short while back, I'd tell you I was hitched to James. You'd see me coming down the hall, with that just married kind of glow. I had faith that quitting my gig at Laurentech for our marriage was the smart play. Love trumps a paycheck, right? Laurentech was this quirky joint. God knows, they had more rules than a prison. One of them serious deal breakers was about family. James put a ring on it and, boom, we're suddenly in the hot seat. Bossman Joe pulls us in, hands us the ultimatum like we're on some second-rate game show. One of you's gotta roll out, he said, face as serious as a heart attack. We had a back and forth that night that would have made for prime reality TV drama. I guess love made me a little stupid. I blinked first and tendered my papers the next day. Threw in the towel on my up-and-coming tech career, to play house. If I knew then what I know now, well, ain't that just life's tagline? Flash to today, and here I am sweeping up cereal because Mr. Promotion on the horizon can't find it in his heart to aim for the bowl. Jim, your mother teach you that? I called out to the other room, my voice getting lost somewhere in the drywall. What's that? He shot back, voice all tight, like my question was a personal attack. Never mind, I muttered, letting it drop. Not worth the hassle. Used to be we could rib each other. Now every word's like stepping on a landmine. Lovely, huh? 2 hours later, he's on the couch, all zoned out in front of the TV, and I'm assessing the remains of what used to be us. We gonna talk or you planning on marrying the couch? I said. James didn't even bother looking my way. About what? I counted to 10 in my head. I dunno, how about us? Where this train wreck's heading? He shrugged. Thought we were good. We stewed in that silence for a while, the TV chattering away to itself. Then it hit me, the realization I'd been living in a glass house someone else threw a rock at. Everything we built, up in smoke, and neither of us knew how to stop the burn. It's funny, ain't it? How fast a life can turn on its head. One day you're planning forever, next day you can't even chat about the weather without it turning into World War III. I stood there a while longer, looking at the man on the couch. He was as familiar as a stranger on a bus. The transition from indifference to cruelty was subtle, but I felt it. It was in the cooling air of the disbanded summer and the sting of a slight wind. Things started changing, like the weather. In the kitchen, I stood there thinking about how things used to be smooth and easy. But now? It felt like walking on ice, unsure if you'll stand or fall. I knew the kind of steak James liked, rare and yet not too bloody, salted and peppered with precision. I had it down to an art, but that day, the oven betrayed me, or maybe it was the other way around. James walked in from the living room, the sound of his heavy footsteps warning me of the mood he was in before he even entered. A second later, there he was, filling the doorway, his eyes taking in the spread as if he was about to pounce on it and tear it apart with his hands rather than sit down to eat like a civilized person. What's this? He pointed at the plate. Your job too tough for you now? His voice was like gravel, rough and scraping. I knew to tread carefully. It's just a bit cooler than usual, James. The steak, I mean, it's not. Not what? He cut me off, glaring. I bit my lip, not saying what was on my mind, because voicing it out loud would only make it worse. Look, Kate, he said, his voice lowering, like that of a predator hiding in the shadows. When I say I want my steak hot, I mean I want to feel the animal's soul leaving the body when I cut into it. This, he tapped the steak with the back of the fork, and it sounded like a judge's gavel. This is dead twice over. He didn't yell, but his voice had a sharpness to it that made my skin crawl. It was almost clinical, detached yet loaded with a venom that was reserved just for me. No loud scene, no drama for the outside world, just the cold, hard words that cut through me. I stayed silent, knowing anything I said would just fan the flames. He pushed the plate away, and his downcast eyes met mine, full of something icy. Son of a... You know what, forget it. He turned his back on me and the food. I'm not eating this crap. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, his movements jerky. Fix your mistakes, Kate. Or next time it'll be more than just dinner in the trash. The door slammed, a period mark to the tail end of the happiness we used to have. I was left there, staring at the closed door, the click of the latch loud in the quiet of the apartment. As his footsteps faded, I let out the breath I was holding. The steak. It just laid there, looking as forlorn as I felt. The trash can was the next thing I'd have to face, a cold reminder of my mistake. Throwing it away felt like I was tossing a part of myself with it, my effort, my care, my desire to make things work. But none of it seemed to matter. Perfect, they called us. His parents, our friends, they all admired the facade we put up. But behind closed doors, the story was different. Demands grew as my self-esteem plunged. James' favorite pastime became scrutinizing every corner of the house, every dish I prepared. I had no job, no income, just him and his approval, which became scarcer with each passing day. And on the nights his parents witnessed an act slightly less convincing than usual, the sofa was my cold reminder of failing to play the doting wife. Tonight was no different. The dinner table was set for 2 plus his ever-judging eyes. What's this? James's voice was flat, pointing at the steamed broccoli. Dinner, I replied, keeping my voice even. Broccoli again? Don't you know anything else? He scoffed, pushing the plate away. I bit back a sharper reply, knowing it wouldn't help. I'll make something else if you're not happy with it. That'd be a first, he muttered. The retort stung, fueling a silent anger inside me. I turned back to the kitchen, feeling his gaze on my every move. Where are you going? He barked. I said I'd make you something else, didn't I? My voice carried a hint of defiance I didn't know I had left. James stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Sit down. Let's not pretend like you've got other things to do. Your world revolves around me, remember? His words were a leash, pulling me back. Yeah, I remember. I heard him sit back down. No, sorry, no, thank you. Just a heavy silence that settled over us like dust. As the night dragged on, so did his critique. This house is a mess, he announced, seemingly out of nowhere. I followed his gaze. The books on the coffee table weren't perfectly aligned, a pillow was slightly askew, life happened in our house. But not the life he wanted. Clean it up. I wanted to scream. To tell him a house lived in would never meet his pristine standards. Instead, I fixed the pillow, straightened the books, and swallowed the lump in my throat. The place could use some work, I muttered under my breath. What was that? His voice had a sharp edge. Nothing, I said quickly, louder now. Just talking to myself. He eyed me with suspicion, but said nothing more. In bed, I lay awake, staring at the darkness. The chasm between us was filled with unspoken thoughts and stifled dreams. I thought of all the words I wanted to say, the accusations, the hurt, anger, and all the wishes for a life that felt like it was slowly slipping away from my grasp. I was tethered, bound by invisible chains of dependency and fear. Perfect, they said. But perfect was just a word, and words were the cheapest currency in the economy of our sham of a marriage. So there I was, just a regular day heading back from the store, arms loaded with groceries. Never did it cross my mind that a bit of ice on the sidewalk would land me square on my rear, but life's got a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? Down I went with a nasty slip, and the pain shot right through my leg like nothing I've felt before. I tried to get up, but no dice. My leg was having none of it, throbbing like mad. That's when a couple of folks came rushing over. You all right? They asked. Must have seen the whole clumsy show. Trying to keep my cool, I just nodded. I think I busted my leg. They didn't think twice and hailed down a cab to whisk me to the hospital. At the ER, it was a circus. Nurses took their sweet time before a doc finally got to me. He had just one look at my leg and his face said it all before his mouth did. "It's broken," he told me, matter of fact like he was talking about the weather. I grimaced, not at the news, but at the thought of facing James with this. While waiting for the docs to do their thing, I figured I should let my husband know, but the dude didn't pick up his phone. Sent him a text, broke my leg, at the hospital, short and sweet, but not even a peep back from him. Turns out, I was stuck there till morning, and the hospital was no hotel, that's for sure. All I got was cold coffee and a nurse who seemed like she'd rather be anywhere else. As soon as I could hobble, they shoved some papers at me to sign and sent me packing in a cab. Back home, the cast was as white as the snow outside and twice as annoying. James was waiting, his face like a thundercloud ready to burst. "No, how you doing?" or "What happened?" He just goes, "Where's dinner?" Really? I'm standing there on crutches, leg in a cast, and he's all mad about dinner? I snapped back. "What do you think? I went dancing. Look at my leg." But he's on a roll, acting like I did it on purpose. "You always have excuses," he sneered. "Can't even do the one thing you're supposed to." Can you believe that? After a night in the ER, all he cared about was his stupid dinner. The whole thing was too much. There I was, hurt and shaking, and he couldn't care less. The air was as cold as that patch of ice I'd slipped on, and I knew right then, this was more than just a broken leg. It was like the ice under us had cracked wide open. I hauled myself toward the kitchen table, crutch by crutch, as if every step was a mile. I was cooking dinner for my beloved husband, it's funny. The bin was near overflowing, and I'd missed it. It was a tiny slip-up, but with James, nothing was ever tiny. "What's this now?" James barked, catching the sight of the unemptied bin. "You're home all day, and you can't even manage the simplest tasks." He stormed over, all bluster and rage, and with one swift motion, toppled the bin, its contents sprawling like a small-scale disaster at my feet. "Clean it up," he thundered. My fingers shook as I reached down, but not from the physical pain of my injury. It was something deeper, a crack in something that had once been whole. That night was sleepless, the echoes of his voice, blending with the hot sting of tears. Morning came with no comfort, just the light revealing the mess of last night. I sat at the kitchen table, papers in front of me, the sound of coffee dripping in the background. James stumbled in, the stink of beer still on him from last night. "Morning," he growled, his voice like gravel. "What's for breakfast?" I pushed the papers toward him. "I've got your breakfast right here." He squinted down at the divorce papers, unreadable for a moment. Then he looked up, a sly, mocking smile spreading across his face. "You serious?" "As a heart attack," I said. Though inside, my heart was racing, like it could bust out of my chest. He threw his head back and laughed, rough and loud. "You ain't got the guts." I clenched my jaw. My voice came out low and steadfast. "Already did it. Just need your sign off." He leaned down, face inches from mine. "You think you can survive without me? You're a broken bird, can't even take out the trash." "I'm done talking, James," I said, meeting his stare. "Sign the papers, or I'll have the law make you sign." He scoffed, grabbed the pen with a squeezed grip, and scrawled his name, each stroke heavy and deliberate. He threw the pen down like it was on fire. "Good luck, darling," he sneered. "You'll be crawling back, before the month's up." But I wouldn't. I couldn't. This was my line in the sand, the overflowing bin that couldn't take more trash, more lies. Despite everything, I smiled, because that paper felt like the first step on crutches toward a different life. "Crawling's not my style," I said quietly. When I opened my eyes the next morning, everything was too quiet. Too calm. It was weird waking up to silence when inside, I felt like everything was about to blow. That's when he told me. Over a cup of coffee, he said we had to get the property split locked down. And, oh boy, he already had a lawyer in mind. Some hotshot in the city, near Lauren Tech. You coming with me, he said, not asking. We'll get this done today. I really didn't have much of a say with my leg all broken and useless, so I just nodded. He helped me into the car, propped up my cast, and off we went. Everything was fine, normal even, until it wasn't. We were zipping down the highway, the city in the distance, like a bunch of toy buildings. Then he pulled over, sudden-like. Said the wheel needed air. I'll check it out, he mumbled. The next thing I know, he told me to get out of the car. Just want to make sure we are safe. His tone was off, and not in a good way. But I got out, leaning on the car for support and feeling every bit as fragile as my plastered leg. He fiddled around by the tires for a minute, and then, without any kind of warning, hopped back in and hit the gas. I mean, he took off so fast I barely had time to shout. So there I was, out in the middle of nowhere with nothing but the sound of his car disappearing down the highway. I couldn't believe it. Was this really happening? I didn't have to think twice. My phone was in my hand, and I was hitting record. When he picked up, he was all smug. I've never hated the sound of a voice more. Come back, I yelled. This isn't funny. But he just laughed. Actually laughed. Said something about me getting what I deserved for wanting a divorce. Can you believe that? The line went dead, and the weight of what just happened slammed into me like a brick wall. I stood there on the side of the road, watching the taillights of his car disappear into a blurred speck in the distance. I was alone, miles from anything that resembled civilization. The chill in my bones went deeper than the winter's touch. It was the harsh truth gnawing at me. I was truly on my own. Cars whizzed by, each one felt like a sting. None of them stopped. Why would they? It's not their drama, not their craziness to deal with. I was just some woman on crutches on the side of the road to them. The chill was setting in, biting through my jacket as the minutes dragged on. There wasn't a soul in sight until a gorgeous Jeep truck rattled to a halt beside me. Behind the wheel was the one I least expected to see here. My former boss, Joe. As the car's heater blasted warm air, I could feel my cheeks and hands start to regain some feeling. Joe glanced over at me, his brow heavy with concern. You look like crap, Kate, you know that? He said, gruff, but kindly. Why the hell didn't you call someone? I shrugged, feeling the weight of the situation press down on me. Thought I could handle it, I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. He left you on the side of the road with a broken leg? His voice rose, incredulous and angry. That James is a damn coward. I nodded, hugging myself tighter as I remembered the icy wind and the pain. Yeah, I guess he is. We reached Lauren Tech, and Joe practically carried me up to the 5th floor. The familiar sounds of the workplace surrounded me, a jarring yet comforting reminder of a life I once knew. Inside his office, Joe handed me a mug of coffee, which I clutched gratefully between my hands. The aroma was a heady promise of warmth. Thanks, Joe, I said after taking a tentative sip. The coffee was strong, just the way I liked it, a sharp contrast to the bitter cold I had endured. He grunted, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Can't believe that bastard. After everything. Let's not talk about him, I interjected, keen to avoid going down that road. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was a comfortable silence, born from years of working together and understanding the ebb and flow of each other's moods. Joe finally stopped pacing and turned to face me. What are you going to do now, Kate? His tone was serious, the playful edge gone. I don't know, I admitted, feeling lost. I really don't know. His gaze softened, and he took the seat across from me. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. We could use you back here. The team hasn't been the same since you left. A spark of something, hope, maybe, or just surprise, fluttered in my chest. You serious? As a heart attack, he said dryly. You were one of the best. Hell, you are the best. I should have fought harder to keep you. I smiled weakly, both warmed and overwhelmed by his offer. Wouldn't be easy with my leg like this. We'll manage. I'll wait until you're back on your feet, literally. He leaned forward, a determined glint in his eyes. I'm not taking no for an answer. The toughness of his words, the undeniable command in his voice, it felt reassuring. Against the backdrop of uncertainty and pain, his offer was a beacon. I'll think about it, I said, knowing full well I'd already made up my mind. I'll think about it, I repeated, allowing a smile to play on my lips. Joe grunted in response, a sound that conveyed understanding and a touch of impatience. Having a purpose, a place to be, and the support of someone who believed in me was more than I could have hoped for given the day's events. It was an unexpected turn, but maybe, just maybe, it was the kind I needed. The air was thick with tension when James headed for the boss's door. The clump of his boots was more hesitant today, like he sensed the storm brewing. He pushed the door, and it creaked open, announcing his arrival to what was once his throne room. There I was, leaning against the desk, arms folded, waiting. James, come in, shut the door behind you, the boss said, his voice an even, ironed-out calm. James saw me and turned pale, but quickly pulled himself together. What's this about? He grumbled like a cornered animal, ready to bite. The boss gestured to the chair, but James didn't sit. Instead, he crossed his arms, a mirror image of my stance, but filled with defiance where mine held determination. James, the boss started, fixing him with a look that could freeze hell over. I always thought of you as a sharp man. But what you've done? That's the sharpest kind of stupid. James shot a glance at me, a mix of fear and anger in his eyes. So, she's been yapping, has she? What lies has she been selling? No lies needed, mate, I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat. Just played him the greatest hits of your ugly symphony. You've been recorded, clear as day. The boss reached into his desk, pulled out a recording device, and slid it across the table. Care to listen for nostalgia? James's face turned the color of concrete. You can't do this. You can't fire me over. Over what, James? Over you terrorizing your wife, my employee? Oh, I can. And I am. The boss cut in, his voice cold steel. James's eyes darted between the two of us, looking for some crack in the armor, some slip of weakness. But there wasn't one. I'll take you to court, he spat out. That's funny, I said with a cold laugh, 'cause that's exactly where we're going. Only difference is, I've got a bed of evidence, and you've got nothing but lies and empty threats. The boss stood up, the chair screeching against the floor like a war cry. Get out of my office, and get out of our lives. You're finished here. And with that, James's fate was sealed. In the courtroom, the evidence weighed heavier than his words, heavier than his anger. The judge didn't hesitate, hitting the gavel like a nail in the coffin of our married life. Sentence you to pay the compensation, and this court grants the separation, the judge announced, and it was like the first breath of spring air, chilly but promising blooms. Back at the job, I slid into the familiar groove of my work, but with a new shine on it. I wasn't just doing tasks, I was rebuilding. Every keystroke was a brick, every good morning mortar, every completed project a pillar in the house of my new life. Kate, my colleague Mark said, breaking my concentration. Must feel weird, huh? Getting everything back? I swiveled in my chair, facing him. Weird doesn't start to cover it, Mark. Feels like I've come back from the dead. Mark chuckled, his laughter rumbling like an old pickup truck. Zombie Kate, back for revenge. I cracked a smile. Something like that. Only this time I'm not taking any crap from anyone. No more Mrs. Nice Gal. That's the spirit. You know, we all got your back here, no matter what. I nodded. The The warmth in the office was more than the heating. It was the camaraderie, a shared fortress against any storm that might come.